It's 30 minutes before dinner. Is your body really hungry? Does it need food now? Does your body need to wait? Right. And then my child makes the decision. My body's really hungry now. Okay, so what can we eat of good nutritional value? Now, why is this important? Because the child is still deciding. If the child is hungry, we need to let the child eat, but we're not taught that. So from an early age, we're taught when we can eat, when we can drink, when we can go to the bathroom. You're in there too long. You got to get out. You got to get back to class.
Hey, it's Penny here, and I have a guest today that I'm going to be interviewing. Now, you know me, I'm all about intuition, noticing the difference between procrastination, resistance, and really tuning in to what we're experiencing and what we're bumping up against when we're attempting to get what we want out of life. So today I'm interviewing Leslie Urbas. She does intuitive eating for gut health and weight loss. She combines human design and digestion. I did a free session with her back in July. And once life settled down after my training, I tuned into what she taught me and I lost 6 pounds without dieting or doing anything crazy. So I really want to share with you what she is about because following your intuition and noticing the difference between resistance, procrastination, and just not being able to get it done around your health and weight loss is just as important as the other areas of your life. Just so you know a little bit about Leslie's background, so your mind isn't going, oh my gosh, this is a bunch of woo bullshit. Leslie is a registered dietitian and she's a personal trainer with 15 years of experience. And her specialty is really helping women to step into the life, health, and the body that they desire without guilt, shame, or sacrifice. So, this is something that she does and has experience with not only from the intuitive perspective, but from a science backed perspective. So stay tuned. We're going to jump right in. Leslie, I had already shared with everyone that you and I did a call in July. It was an intuitive eating digestive code. I think it was 30 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
right? We chatted a little bit. I went headlong into a 100-hour training week. So I didn't really have time to tune into what you and I talked about till August into September and pretty easily released 6 pounds without dieting, without putting a heavy focus on what I was eating, when I was eating, how many calories I was eating. And it was nice to just see my body lighten. And I really want people to know more about this because I'm all about following our intuition. When people are in their business and they're in their life and they're dealing with what they think is procrastination, sometimes I talk about that actually being resistant. That resistance can come
Okay.
from what we're doing not being aligned with where we are. So this really felt good to me. And I hear people talk about intuitive eating all the time. And it didn't really, I don't know, it didn't resonate the same as the work that we do. So before we really dive into the intuitive aspect, I would love for you to first go in a little more detail introducing yourself so that people understand the education and the science that also connects with what you're saying, that it's not just another woo-woo strategy, if you will.
Totally and completely. And I hear what you're saying about the intuition, like intuitive eating plan. So I will incorporate that in there as well. And I read that book probably right after I became a dietitian, I want to say. And I felt the very same way that you did while doing it. I was like, I don't know about this. Anyways, but so I am Leslie, just like you said. I have been a registered dietitian and a personal trainer for 15 plus years. But as I like to state, truthfully, I'm a recovering selfless overachiever who was living based on everyone else's plan, based on their boxes being checked and what they needed. And that's really how digestion codes got born, truthfully. Uh, I, like any other dieter back in the day, at 15 is really where my journey began, where I was told by my high school softball coach, I was too fat to play varsity softball. And I was told by another girl in my class that I was too fat to hang out with her on the weekend. And I was a normal, healthy body weight, to be very honest, like BMI 100% normal. But it didn't matter. It was written then that the next moment, I basically went to the mirror and I talked to myself poorly. And it was like, you're right. You have all these pimples here and you're not very pretty and you are bigger and you're not skinny. And that's when I truthfully went to what I was taught was beautiful growing up, which was 5'2", 5'2", skinny, blonde. And while I was blonde, I had nothing else going for me. I was 5'7", and I was not small and petite. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make myself this way. But I bore an unhealthy image of what I felt like I needed to have in my head compared to this. And then I did what everybody does. Well, let me dabble in this. Let me dabble in this. Let me dabble in this. Let me control this. Let me be more outstanding than this. Let me look outside of me on the shelf for these answers that I am completely looking for, because that's what we're taught. Go see a doctor, go get help, go do these things, right? And I did that. I wound up actually heavier when I graduated high school, heavier when I graduated than when I had both of my two children. Like day I gave birth, I weighed less than the day I graduated high school. And I say that not from the standpoint that weight is so big, but that I know how it feels to feel like you've checked every box that the overachiever has accomplished and you want a different way. Like, I'm not any more fulfilled. I'm choosing between the battle of I'm living my life freely, or I look great in the clothes, or I'm living my life freely and the clothes fit with ease. It's two opposite opposing things. And that's what women are always constantly giving up. And I read that book, The Intuitive Eating, and the part where she talked about eating anything that you felt like you couldn't until the point of contentment. And as somebody with a body image issue, it wouldn't have helped, because I didn't get to what internally was the struggle, which is how digestion codes really became about, because it's really what's happening inside your relationship with food, the relationship that you've had with it, what your internal code was and is still that got written out. And that's really how I came up with the digestion codes and how I really help people, because we're not here to check the boxes. If so, then we would all have the same blueprint.
Yeah, and you really touched on a lot there. And I think that if you just purely take the quality of food, at least here in the US, if you purely take the quality of food out of the equation, so much around what we do revolves around self image and our emotions. And you mentioned contentment and eating until you're content. Well, if you're eating to feel emotionally content and not satisfied, and you're not addressing that underlying piece, it's a huge deal. I've had many clients in my years that come to me for maybe they're having confidence and motivation issues just around showing up in life in general, or maybe they were having a money mindset issue, or maybe they're carrying guilt or shame around something, and we resolve that emotional component in the weight releases, because if they are following their intuition to eat, they're no longer eating to feel content emotionally. And boundaries is another huge piece. Boundaries in relationships, I've seen that overlap. So maybe we will or we won't get to that in our discussion, but I would love to hear your input on relationship boundaries, and food boundaries. So you mentioned that you became the consummate overachiever when it came to food and body image. Did you end up with an eating disorder through all of that? Like, what would be classified as a diagnosed eating disorder? And how did you get
Oh,
past
yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I almost forgot about that part. That part comes after. So, as I said, I graduated high school heavier. I would like to even say that I became a dietitian for like a good purpose, but I really just thought, well, I haven't conquered the food thing yet, so I might as well go spend my life doing it so I can keep this in control. And it was shortly after my freshman year began. I didn't even have a nutrition class yet. Like your freshman year is all just basically, all the gen ed classes you have to take. And I was sitting in my chemistry class thinking, I'm about to be a dietitian, and I surely don't look like one somebody would want to follow. So I need to play the part. And I think it was the day after Thanksgiving is when it happened. I just developed a serious boyfriend in like late October-ish, maybe even early October-ish, and we had been serious for a little while. We were at Thanksgiving, and a big part of my family is who's lost weight, who's done this, right? Like even still to this day, it's something that's talked about of like, oh, she lost weight, she did this, whatever. Like it's a stature, like weight and money are how our worth exists. And I remember being like, I have nothing. So I decided the day after Thanksgiving I was going to stop eating. And I knew that wasn't possible because I exercised every single day. At 15, because of all this, I became an avid 5 a.m. wake up workout kind of girl. Still do it to this day because it's just a habit I have, right? I never missed a day. I started with my mom at 15. We did workouts at home and continued on. Well, then I decided that I was going to go all in commitment. And luckily, one thing I've had is that when I make the decision and I'm fully committed, I actually do it. And that was really good for me to hear again today, for me to say that out loud. But I decided I wasn't going to eat. Well, I work out, so I had to eat something. So I limited and probably ate 200 to 300 calories a day. And I lost all the weight I had gained in high school within a 4 week period. I was found out by Christmas because my cousin and I worked together, and we took a break one night together, and she noticed I didn't eat anything. She's like, Leslie, it's dinner. I was like, it's only 15 minutes. I don't have enough time to eat. She's like, you always eat dinner during this 15 minutes. I was like, I don't have time to eat today. And she put together that I was drastically losing weight. So she told my mom. My mom confronted me, and it was like, nope, I am turning this off because I am not going to wind up with some sort of camp or whatever. So I immediately turned it back off because I was committed to not admitting the fault and that being the conversation. And yeah, the eating disorder for me was luckily probably found out that soon, or it definitely could have gone down a bigger rabbit hole. But I truthfully was doing it for my profession. I just then had no idea how to hold it. I had no idea how to hold it. I remember being like on Christmas Day, like, I've got to figure something out fast because I will gain this all back because I didn't exactly know how I did it other than only eating a little bit of calories. So that's when I became an exercise eating or an exercise, what is it called? It's called excessive exercise disorder. I worked out every single day, 2 or 3 times a day for 4 or 5 hours a day for the next 3 years. If I would really want a snack in the middle of the afternoon at school and I didn't have a class, I would immediately go for a run. I'd be like, okay, done with my things I got to do. I'm going to go for a run, a 2 mile run. So that way I'll curb my sugar craving or whatever so I could hold it. And I avidly used that. I only fell out of that because when I went for my internship, there was no time to be an excessive exerciser. I worked out before I went to my internship, but some days you would be busy 16 hours a day. So that also helped with eating. So it was able to stay off then. And then I was just like everybody else, struggling, continuing to yo-yo back and forth. If I was happy with a boyfriend, I was up 10 pounds. If I was successfully no vacations and we were, holding each other accountable to doing the things, I was down the 10 pounds. And just like everybody's life, when life gets in the way, we gain it. When life gets out of the way, we lose it. That's not a way to live. You're supposed to have both. And that's really where this came from.
Yeah, you touched on something, and this isn't to that extreme, but I want to say it because I know I'm not the only person who ever did it. After my son was born, I went to Weight Watchers. And this was back when they did the point system. I don't know what they do now, but they did the point system. And of course, the healthier you ate, the more you could eat throughout the day. And that was the point. But people would come in and say things like, well, if you want to have M&Ms and you want to exercise off the points, for every plain M&M, you walk the length of a football field. And I'm sitting here thinking, a bag of M&Ms, how many trips up and down stadium would I have to make? But there were literally people who would look at that and they would measure their life around having what they needed to soothe their feelings rather than eating healthy. And through you and I connecting, because earlier this year I did some ketogenic work, which I will continue to do off and on just so that I can ease myself into fasting in a healthy way. And I do it in a very specific way that's managed by a physician to activate that autophagy. But I don't want to be in restriction all of the time. And you and I had talked about that and how it is okay to have carbs. And if you're really feeling that today you want to eat, I don't know, say pasta, for example, that follow that in what you need in that moment because your body will tell you what you need in that moment. But I'm also manifesting generator, which we'll get into a little bit later. But what was your, so you said that you had to figure out a way to keep it off, that you went into this exercise 2 to 3 times, 4 or 5 hours a day. What was really your turning point? What was that moment that helped you to shift into a healthier identity with your body and with food?
Well, I don't remember exactly. I think I was 24 when I joined the United States Navy. And I was still kind of battling it then. But it worked out to my advantage joining the Navy because I was at the lowest point. I think because I was so stressed out. I had graduated from internship. I lost a ton of weight. I was trying to break up with a boyfriend for a really long time. It was crushing him. I was going out on my own. I was leaving my family, which I'd never done before in my life. I'm joining the Navy, like stress, right? I joined the Navy. A lot of my life was controlled for those 5 weeks. And then when I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, I moved in December, January. And when I moved, I didn't really have any friends and it was winter. So I was able to kind of keep it off. And I remained there. And I really got sick a couple more times. It was a crazy story. Like I'd love to say the story ended there, but I manifested somehow a back infection, compressed my spine, had osteomyelitis. I overdid some things and I got like a vocal cyst that had to be removed, these crazy things, all the while riding this roller coaster. But the majority of time I was at the lower end. As I hit about 28 years old, I could no longer just over exercise myself out of it. I couldn't solve the puzzle. I became so stressed and I think my body really went into excessive cortisol, stress hormones, all of that. And I actually almost bloated up to like the second highest weight minus the pregnancies in between. And that's actually when like I was breaking up with my ex-fiance at the time. I was entangled in a huge mess in a different relationship. And I just decided that I had to change myself. I'm going to change my life. I had just bought a house for myself. And that's really when I started to be like, how can somebody who in the beginning of the year was absolutely like, I don't want to buy a house. I don't want to buy a house. What was the shift from I am totally opposed to this to I bought myself an amazing house all by myself and manifested the exact one that I wanted and got exactly what I wanted in how I wanted, when I wanted it, and the day that I wanted to move in. How did I do that? So I rewired that process in my brain to be like, this is how you change this. And so I enacted the steps that I did to buy the house in the way that I changed myself. Now, I still worked for the Naval Hospital for quite a few years after that. It wasn't, so this would have been in 2015. It was when I built my business that I started to teach people because what I did for myself, I couldn't speak to in the Naval Hospital because by law, I was told I could only speak of certain things, right? I wasn't a counselor. I wasn't these things. I was a dietitian, and by law, I had to be coded certain ways.
The first thing that I want to say is thank you for your service. The second thing I want to touch on is you said a very powerful word. And I think that so many people discount the power of this word. I did a whole podcast episode on it. It's the power of deciding. That's where that shift happened. You
Oh
weren't going to
yeah.
try it. You weren't wishing, you weren't hoping, and you weren't wanting. You decided.
Yeah, that's so funny. This has been my big word of the past few days. So I love how you're bringing this up because I wasn't taught to make a decision that way, right? I was taught make a decision and then worry about it, fret over it, go into all the reasons why it can't happen. But I didn't do it with the house. And I still to this day don't know why. I looked, and then the moment that I wasn't getting it, I just decided, you know what? I'm just done for right now. I'm done for right now because I know the perfect house is going to show up. And it sure did. It showed up in the weirdest way. I was going online to buy a dress. It was 4th of July. It was the day before 4th of July. I was like, I just want to buy something. I want to buy something. I needed retail therapy at the time, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll go online. And I had to go through my email. And I went through my email to click on this dress to buy and a Victoria's Secret. And I saw the housing thing. I was like, oh, I'll click on it. Literally the third house down. I'm the third daughter. So I always love the thirds of things. And I was like, oh my God, that's my house. Right. So the decision to buy, and I didn't blink. Like I had zero time stalking. I was stalking my realtor, calling because she had this meeting, right? She was like, well, I'll see if I can get you in. Luckily, I was the first person to call. 15 other people called. I had a split second to make the decision. Somebody else is coming in 20 minutes. If you don't sign this paper, I guarantee you one of these other 15 people will. And I was sure of it. So I was like, I just have to do it, right? And that's how it had to become with nutrition because people take this, well, I'm going to try this diet and see if it fits in my lifestyle, see if I can do it, see if it happens. And they don't really decide, they don't really commit because we're looking to jump inside someone else's box and check their boxes for us. And our diet is internal. What's happening in our body after we swallow? How are we processing it? So the decision has to come. The decision to be like, I am the most important person in my life. And because of that, I need to know what's happening inside. But people don't view decision this way. Like I totally, I'm like, what's funny is I've been talking to about decisions with my friends for the past 3 days. And just like, well, I've made this decision. So because I've made this decision that this is going to happen, this is the next step. Well, Leslie, I don't know that that makes sense. Okay, as soon as you say that to me, I'm like, okay, you're to the side because you're not with me, right? You're not with me. You're holding me back. And that's where the next piece of digestion codes has really come into with my clients. They too have people that are like, what are you thinking? Why are you investing in that? What are you like? Where is that? And they're like, I know. This is where I go now.
Yeah. We have to have trust in ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
when we decide, I'm just going to loop a little something in here because I know my audience. This deciding, it's the identity shift.
Mm-hmm.
That's the identity shift. And you did something else. Um, Letting go of the how doesn't mean not taking any action. Letting go of the
Mm-hmm.
how means that you do take action, like you were looking at listings, but you reached the point where you weren't fighting it anymore. You weren't creating that resistance and you just let it go when it showed up. And the same thing happened in your health because where we focus that attention on that resistance, if we focus our attention on what people are saying, it manifests as our own doubt. Well, we're not doing it the way that they do it. And it doesn't matter what we want out of life, um, it will perpetuate the problem. So I'm just going to sit back and shut up here for a minute. I'm just pulling some things together, but I'm going to sit back
I
and
love
shut up
that.
for a minute. And I want you to walk people through this process that is the digestion codes and how people can walk away with something today that will shift them in their relationship with food.
I love that. I'm going to actually talk about it from your piece here, because of the way you said your audience. I loved it. So the first piece really is what I call your internal diet, your internal code. You have this code. We all had this code. We came to this earth, and what did we know how to do? We knew how to cry. We came out, we cried. It either meant we needed food, we were wet, we were poopy, we needed a burp, we wanted you to hold us, right? 5 simple things. And we had no problem. We didn't once think, should I cry? Is mom taking a shower? Is mom, in the bathroom? Does mom need a second to regroup? No, we just cried, right? We internally had this. So we decided at a young age that we were going to cry when we needed something, right? Now we're talked out of that with food all the time. I go to the kitchen. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, so I refer to them often. My children come to the kitchen a lot and they'll say, Mom, I'm hungry. And we will talk about it. Let's say it's 30 minutes before dinner. It's 30 minutes before dinner. You absolutely cannot have a snack. It's 30 minutes before dinner. Is your body really hungry? Does it need food now? Does your body need to wait? Right. And then my child makes the decision. My body's really hungry now. Okay, so what can we eat of good nutritional value? Now, why is this important? Because the child is still deciding. If the child is hungry, we need to let the child eat, but we're not taught that. So from an early age, we're taught when we can eat, when we can drink, when we can go to the bathroom. You're in there too long. You got to get out. You got to get back to class. I don't care. You just went. You can't go again. So we learn to disassociate from our body. We learn that somebody else knows. Mom knows when I eat. Mom knows when I drink. Teachers know when I can drink. Teachers know when I can go to the bathroom. I have to ask to get up to get a Kleenex so I can merely have, snot rolling down my face until the teacher calls on me to say, what are you interrupting me for? And it's like, I got this booger coming down my face. What do you want me to do? And they're like, well, go get a Kleenex. Well, yes, I know, but you told me I can't get up in the class unless I ask, right? So we're taught to ignore our body. So our internal code literally flies out the door. That screaming baby doesn't exist in us anymore. We're not hearing us inside. So that's the decision. And your identity shift comes from, I'm going to uncover my internal code because I'm going to step into the person who knows her body, who literally knows, yes, that Oreo is for me today. No, I actually don't want the Oreo today. Okay. Or yes, I do want to eat a ton of meat. Or actually, I can eat a little bit less meat. Or I want to follow keto. I want to follow this pattern that works for my body with ketogenic and fasting and eating carbs, which is possible when you know your code and how to do it right. Right. And then the second step is really understanding where the sabotage comes in. Because as you said, now I have this identity shift. So now I'm somebody who eats in alignment with themselves, right? So I uncover my code. And one of the things that we uncovered with you is that there are days that you have to eat a lot and days that you have to eat a little, right? So when we uncover that, you're like, that makes total sense. And some of those days can be like a sugar crave. You can have a sugar crave, which we're taught, oh, this is bad, right? So that sugar craving comes up. And what do you hear when you're in your past identity is that's bad for you. You're not supposed to eat it. Candy's bad for you. How many laps do you have to walk up and down the football field from Weight Watchers, right? So I have this piece. And now with the identity shift, I have to let it go, right? I have to let it go. This was my past Weight Watchers experience, my past keto experience, my past doctor's experience, the way that my dad talked to me. My dad didn't teach me this, but I had to let go of what I assumed a healthy, beautiful woman looked like because my identity said she was 5'2" and skinny and petite. I wasn't going to be able to shrink myself, right? So I had to allow myself to step into that new piece by letting go of that. That's where we get to the sabotage. Some of the sabotage can be from really early on. Like I said, the teacher not letting you go to the bathroom. So that's why you can sit at your computer for hours and never know you have to go to the bathroom, right? But then other pieces can come from our dieting. It can come from the most recent diet where there was a list, eat this, not that. The not that is now a negative experience. So when you eat it, you induce cortisol and stress into your body and you cause more weight gain, proving that you shouldn't eat it when that's not the real reason. Okay. So then that goes into the third step, the lies that we're believing. I like to term this one as the action. When we go to doing something, when we go to, okay, I'm going to eat healthy for me. I've uncovered my code. I understand now more of myself and I need to take the action. I still come from an orange is better than those fruity, sugary orange slices they sell in the United States. I don't know if they sell them anywhere else. I don't know that I've seen them over here in Europe. Okay. But same thing, right? So one's a whole orange healthy slices that we think of, and then orange sugary candy slices. But if we were to portion them exactly in a 15-gram serving of sugar, they're no different. Your body only sees sugar. So we have to unprogram the lies that there's healthy food, there's good food, there's bad food, there's food that's all these things, and understand that there's just a different nutritional value that I am receiving. And I'm choosing my own nutritional value based on my code at that time. And then the last piece, like you kind of said, is that, you let go of the fighting, you let go of the resistance, and you step into it by inwardly knowing that you're the solid person making the decision. You're back to that crying baby who can cry and know, I've really had a bad day today. So me going home and making this food meal that I had planned today is not in congruence with me. It's actually against what I need. Instead, what I need is, and that's what I'm hearing, and I'm going to follow through with that because that's going to give my body results, not the man-made plan that was written for me.
I've had days where there was something that my body wanted so bad. I have gotten in the car and I have gone to the store. And my husband would be like, that's ridiculous. I'm like, I will eat everything in the house. But if I feel like this is what I really want right now, this is what will satisfy me, it actually ends up being less calories and less of a negative impact. And you talked about the lies and what you can eat and what you shouldn't eat, and the cortisol with what you shouldn't eat. And that looped back to something that I heard on Abraham Hicks, which is so true. He, they, the
Yeah.
rester. So, I get so confused. For the longest time, I'm like, who the hell is Abraham Hicks? This is a woman. Like
I
it
know.
didn't
I get
click.
it.
I was
Me
confused.
too.
Okay,
Me
let
too.
me admit I was confused at the beginning of my spiritual journey. But she talked about the stories that we tell ourselves around food in the words that we use. If we tell ourselves a food is going to make us fat, guess what?
It does.
That food will make us fat. And then you talk about the not eat list, and me being in healthcare, the physiology perspective, you talk about the not eat list and the stress that that creates because inside we're in conflict because we've been told we're not supposed to eat it, which means we're not acceptable, we're not good enough, we're not following the rules, we're not punching someone else's checklist. And cortisol causes us to elevate those sugar levels, which causes us to dump insulin, which signals to our body there's too much here, store fat. I mean, it was just like such a full circle moment because we can have this information, but not connect the dots. And I just have to say that was really enlightening the way that you pulled that together. Just a lot of things I knew it just like put a nice, happy little bow on it.
I get it. I understand. The same with you with the decide and identity shift and stuff like that. I was like, oh my God, it's like you knew where my brain was today.
Well, it's consciousness, right? It is consciousness. So part of what you do, you also speak to gut health when you talk about that digestion, right? Is the intuitive piece what addresses the gut health, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I really do this in a different way. So we start just like how you said with the identity. You have to know where you are with food to understand. And then you really need nutrition basics from a outside perspective of like what constitutes healthy, okay, more nutrition than less nutrition. And it's not this is good or bad. It's just, okay, what actually is more nutrition? We have no idea. Is it white food? Is it brown food? Is it no carbs? Is it only carbs that don't have gluten? Right? It's so confusing. So I use it on a gamut for you to understand what nutrition looks like. And then you feel where you fall, right? Maybe you have to be gluten free. Maybe you are a whole grain eater, but you really love white bread. So that may be the one thing you choose. Okay. So going to that nutrition aspect. And then it's diving into more of your code from there. So I use pieces from lots of different things. I use some human design aspects. I use some nervous system aspects because your nervous system governs your metabolism. It governs your gut. That's where the gut piece comes into. But you have to build from the basis up, right? So we build with identity, seeing where we're at. Then we go into our nutrition. Then we understand, okay, how was I written? What was the way that I was? And then if you have a living parent, it's awesome to find out. Like one of the things I remember from breastfeeding my two children was that the breastfeeding nurse said, this is how you keep the drill. The baby eats every 2 hours. Neither one of my children ever went 2 hours. And I remember crying on day one or day two or something. I don't remember, after we had gotten home with our first one, our daughter, Lily. And my mother said, I was taught feed, 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 feed. Baby's hungry, feed the baby. If the baby's hungry, feed the baby. So I used the rule for my mother, which is actually should be the rule, because the baby should dictate when the baby is hungry, right? And find out how you were raised. Were you raised with that, or was it more like you get to eat every 2 hours or so? Try to think back, maybe ask friends that you're still friends with, or siblings, about some of those things that could have been there, right? So that's one of the things that you do in this code. And then you move onward to pieces of understanding you can actually tell the energy of a food to know if you should or shouldn't eat it. And then you can actually determine how your nervous system is going to respond. You can actually help yourself digest the food more readily, have less issues, have less autoimmune issues, have less gut health issues, all of those pieces. And then you get to dictate how your plan is going to look, because it's going to fit into your life. It's no longer, okay, it's a lifestyle change, so I'm going to change my life to fit into your diet. No, I'm going to choose, this is the way I want my life to be, and my food is going to meet me in it because it's coming internally and no longer outside.
Yeah, I remember when I first trained in hypnosis, I did a basic hypnosis certification program, which meant on graduation day, I bought a ton of other programs to be able to work with very specific issues. And one of the things that I purchased was a weight loss program. The hypnosis scripts and the information was from a dietitian who was from the school that you eat 6 small meals a day. Whether you're hungry or not, you snack or you eat a meal, 6 small meals a day. So you don't give yourself a chance to get hungry and ravenous. So you're tuning out that voice. And I guess I must have just figured it out on my own. I stopped working with people for weight loss. I'm like, I can help you with cravings. I can help you to tune in and eat only when you're hungry, but I'm not going to give you a plan. Like I'm not in the business of doing that. And besides, for some women, especially with hormones and all the things, weight loss can be complex, which is where I think that intuition comes in so beautifully. But people have asked me, and I just kind of want to drop this here. I talk about gut health issues being one of the top 3 areas that is medically studied for hypnosis. And I recently did a workshop on the neuroscience of hypnosis. And I want to share something that's actually been studied, and I can give people a concrete and factual answer. People want to know if hypnosis can help the actual gut health. And it can from the nervous system perspective. But they
Mm-hmm.
actually studied to see if it influenced the gut microbiome and the gut flora. And unequivocally, the answer is no, it does not. You have to address that through what you're doing, right? And what we're taking in intuitively and otherwise. What would you say to anyone who has tried every diet? They're frustrated. They're listening to what you've had to say, and they're going, well, this sounds really nice. What is one takeaway that you could give them that they could walk away today and they could understand it and begin to use it to see a shift?
Great question. I would say one of two things, depending on how the person is. The next time you go to eat something that you term as bad, or that you've set a rule around, journal what you're saying in your head. Because you will find out the things that you are saying in your head didn't come from you, they came from somebody else. And a lot of times it could be a childhood bully. Like mine was typically like, you're fat and ugly. Now that came from my head, but it came from those two people addressing that to me, right? And then I would say the other thing would be, I always start people with writing a list of all the rules they think they have to follow. So every rule, I got to count my calories. I got a meal plan. I got to portion control. I got to cook 3 meals. I got to eat at these times. I got to follow this diet. Whatever it is, every single thing that you believe is something you have to do, I want you to write the list down. And then I want you to look at the list and ask yourself for each one, do I actually enjoy it? And if the answer is no, you are not doing anything for you. You're literally checking the boxes like my selfless overachiever self, and those boxes will fail you because the day you don't feel like doing it, and the day that you're tired of being the selfless overachiever, that you're tired of strapping on everybody's oxygen masks and you're ready to, give yourself some oxygen and stop turning blue in the face, that moment, that's the day that you shove the entire bag of Oreos in your face. And then you're like, oh, I have to start all over again. And not all of it, like I get it, I never did that either, but it's the reference, right? Because we break the rules like we did when we were a child when it comes to dieting, because food is literally one of the biggest things in our control. Anybody in the hospital will tell you what's the thing they complain about most? Food, because it's the only thing they control. They can't control what time they go to procedure, what time the doctor comes in, what time they're woken up, but they can control their food. So we learn food is in our control. And so in order to keep the control, it has to come from something inside of you. And those would be my two things that I really typically have people start with, depending on if they're struggling more with binge eating, stress eating, or just, I have nowhere to where to begin. So
Yeah, I think that's beautiful because so many people, and I used to be this way big time. I mean, I'm human. I still walk this path. We slip into habits and we're totally unaware of what we're doing. In awareness, that illumination of what is actually driving us to do what we do, that gives us our power because then we can decide. When we have that awareness, we can decide. You can't decide anything if you don't know what you're deciding. And yeah, they're just, I could talk about this stuff forever. And we've been going for a little bit here. Um, I've really enjoyed connecting with you. I really enjoyed that when you and I had our call and what you shared that was specific to me. And that's something that I want to highlight. If you connect with Leslie, she is going to look at your human design in your code because we all process information differently. We all respond differently. And that was what she shared with me as what was specific to me in following my body. And everything that came out of her mouth, it felt true. And if you've been on a spiritual path like I have, you learn, right, that your intuition is spot on. And when she said it, it was truth to me. And I never thought to apply those same principles to my diet and my digestive health. So, Leslie, I would love for you to share with them. Number one, do you have something you want to share with the audience? Number two, how can they connect with you and work with you in the social media channels and all of the usual wrap up?
yeah, of course. So to connect with me, you can find me on any Facebook or platform, period, with Leslie Urbas. So again, Leslie spelled IE at the end, and Urbas is Urbas. That is also my website, leslieUrbas.com, and you can find different ways to work with me there.
Leslie, it was beautiful to have you here talking about deciding and following our intuition to be healthy. So, for all of you who were listening, please share this episode if it resonated with you, because we are souls who are taking up temporary residence in our physical bodies. And for us to come here and do what we were put here to do, we have to nurture and nourish and take care of our body in a way that is aligned for the work that we are here to do so that we feel our best. If you're interested in tuning in subconsciously, to use your subconscious to help you to shift that identity, then go over to the website pennychiasson.com/theta hypnosis. get the quick drop hypnosis for free. Train your brain to drop into theta, because when we go into cohesion in the theta state, there's scientific research that that is the environment where healing can begin to occur. So even though the hypnosis isn't about what Leslie has talked about, it creates opportunity for your brain and your mind to do that healing for you. As always, be sure to subscribe on the YouTube channel, your favorite podcast platform, and like and share on Instagram. I will see you all next week.